It began with a draft, faint and barely noticeable, something that might have been explained by a poorly sealed window or a shift in air pressure from the hallway outside. He felt it one Thursday evening as he passed the far end of his living room, the place where the corridor leading to the bedroom stopped in a dead-end wall painted the same off-white color as the rest of the apartment. But the air that touched his neck wasn't cold exactly, it was thin, like air pulled from somewhere deeper, somewhere longer than the blueprint of this building should have allowed. He didn't investigate that night. He stood at the end of the corridor for a few seconds, staring at the blank wall, blinking slowly, as if enough concentration might reveal something missed before. But nothing had changed, nothing was visible. Still, the next morning, the wall seemed further away, by a meter, maybe two, and he assumed, rather sensibly, that his perception was skewed by sleep or stress or the trick of light. The week passed as usual. He went to work, returned home, moved through the apartment with the casual intimacy of someone who's memorized every step, every corner, every squeak in the floorboards. But the following Thursday, as he passed the hallway again on the way to the kitchen, he paused. The wall was gone. Or rather, it had moved. What had been a shallow passage now extended 3, perhaps 4 meters longer. The walls were the same paint, same scuffed baseboards, but the end was now cloaked in dimness, retreating into soft shadow, without any sign of a door or junction. Just a corridor that hadn't been there before. He did not step into it. He stood at the edge, one foot still planted in the known space of his apartment, and stared. The light above didn't reach far, and the darkness wasn't total, just quiet, ambiguous, undefined. No noise came from it. No smell. No breeze this time. Just stillness. A calm so sterile it made his skin feel like it didn't quite fit. He closed the door to the bedroom that night without looking toward the hallway, telling himself that maybe the building was undergoing renovations, or that he had misjudged the layout all this time. But in the back of his thoughts, something hung cold and low, like a chain too long left in a dark well. That wall had not always been so far. And now it wasn't a wall at all. The next Thursday, he forgot. Not about the hallway, that stayed heavy in the periphery of his attention, but about the calendar, the date, the rhythm that had begun to take root without him realizing. He noticed instead that the corridor was longer again. Not drastically, but measurably. There was no sound of construction, no sign of shifted flooring or altered blueprints. It just was. And again, no door. No decoration. Just an extension of emptiness, leading nowhere. He told no one. Who would he tell? What could he even say? That his apartment was growing? That space was being added behind his back? Instead, he started sleeping with his bedroom door shut tight, and kept the hallway light off at night. But each time he passed by in the morning, the corridor seemed more present, more real, more intent, as though it were waiting for something, perhaps for him to acknowledge it more directly. Yet he didn't. He refused. Not because he was afraid, he told himself, but because it wasn't necessary. It was just space. Space did not harm. Space did not think. Space was not alive. Until the fourth Thursday. And the sound. A faint thud, like a cardboard box collapsing. Not loud. Not close. But distinct. Coming from somewhere deep within that corridor. He didn't move for a long time after that. He did not plan to enter. The idea had formed somewhere in the folds of his awareness, not as decision but as weight, a slow and inevitable tilt towards something that had been waiting patiently. On the fifth Thursday, the hallway extended so far into shadow that it no longer looked like a feature of the apartment, but rather a passage into some other structure, a segment added by a hand that did not care for geometry or architectural logic. The end of the corridor was no longer visible. It simply continued. At 3:11 a.m., he got out of bed and walked barefoot toward it, not quickly, not carefully, just steadily, as if he had done this before in a version of himself that remembered differently. The hallway light above him flickered once, not dramatically, not like in films, just enough to remind him that electricity, too, was uncertain here. The sound underfoot changed slightly after the seventh step. The texture of the floor remained, but it no longer creaked as it did elsewhere in the apartment. Instead, it absorbed sound, as though built from something too soft to return vibration. He paused once, not from fear but from confusion, not about the corridor itself, but about how long he'd been walking. He could no longer see the entrance behind him. The wall, the frame, the dim glow of the kitchen, gone. Only corridor ahead, corridor behind. It might have been seconds. It might have been hours. There were no doors. No windows. Only smooth, continuous walls. But there was something else, a subtle repetition. At first, he thought it was a pattern in the floor, the grain of the wood or an accidental scrape. But soon he noticed that every 10 meters, the scuff mark on the left wall repeated. Identical. Then the small crack in the corner. Then the faint shadow in the ceiling's bend. Not mirrored, exactly the same. And he began to feel not that the corridor was long, but that he had entered a loop that did not close.